Hi, Peter. How are you?
Well, I have to say, it's started. I went, me and Mrs. 10 Minutes went out at the weekend. We went out to see a band called Muse, popular music group, out at the O2. And it's a bit of a journey. We were going out on Sunday. Lovely day, a bit like today, actually. Beautiful day all day. And it was all, busy, central London, lots of people milling about, lots of people on the tube, on the underground. And it's not a complicated journey, but there's a couple of stops along the way. And it's quite busy. So the wife got a seat okay, and I was standing, and there was this big bloke sitting down, tattoos, beard, piercings everywhere, and he's just doing the man stance and man spread or whatever it is, and he looked up and caught my eye. I thought, oh God, here we go. Looked like he'd been having a beer, and he said, "Oh, I'm terribly sorry." He said, "I was in a world of my own. Would you like to sit down?"
Oh, no.
I'm getting off at seats on the tube. I must have looked particularly frail that day, because it happened again on the next leg of the journey as well. Somebody said, "Would you like to sit down?"
Is that the first time that's happened?
It is the first time it's happened. So it started. This is it. A long, slow decline towards incontinence and a Zimmer frame.
Did you accept a seat?
It starts here. No. I said, "No, I'm fine, thanks. Thanks, appreciate the offer. I'm fine." So grabbed hold of the handrail really firmly to show the arms off,
Oh, I'd take full advantage of it. It's like, too right, yeah, give us your seat. I've earned this.
And on that note, welcome back to the Measuring Up podcast, the UK's first, and as far as we're concerned, favourite commercial joinery podcast. I'm Peter Millard, and as well as running a virtual 10-minute workshop for YouTube, I also run a small but far from perfectly formed carpentry and cabinet making business in the no man's land of West London.
And I'm Andy McClellan, and I don't run a cabinet making business up in Newcastle upon Tyne, and I run a YouTube channel and various other bits and pieces all around the internet, and every couple of weeks from now on, for season 4, we get together in our internet cafe and we have a chat about all things woodworking and making stuff, and a bit on the business side of things. And what else do we talk about? I can't even think.
I don't know. Whatever rubbish springs to mind. You've managed to preempt my first question for season 4, which is going to be, have you got any time to do any woodworky jobby job type stuff? Because everything you seem to be doing, the last job that you shot video on for YouTube was your oak alcove units things, which seems like forever ago. And everything you've done on YouTube since then seems to have been businessy type stuff, talking about comments, talking about YouTube, a different, a bit of a transition. And I don't mean you're going to turn into Andrea or anything. I mean, you're switching away from doing maker type stuff, going into a bit more DIY type kind of stuff, and no paying work on the horizon. Have you made a little bit of an announcement at the end of your most recent video, and you've done one on to your Patreon supporters?
Yeah, well,
it's go on, spit it out.
The thing is, it sounds like this massive change that's just happened, but it's really been very transitional and very, very slow from my perspective. But eventually it kind of gets to that point where I'm going to have to say something, because people are going to notice that I'm just not doing customer projects anymore. And it did eventually come to that point where, I've got my company sitting in the background, my woodworking business, where it's mounting up costs just doing nothing. There's business running costs.
Yeah.
If you're literally not running a business, you've got insurances and vehicle running costs and bank charges and all sorts of other things that just mount up in the background. And accountancy fees,
They won't be going away. Let's just
away. And eventually it got to the point where it's like, it doesn't make sense to keep that entity hanging around any longer. And because I've never really spoken to anyone, I put out a thing on my Patreon and whatnot, but I haven't really spoken to anyone about this yet. I haven't put anything out on YouTube, and I don't think I'm gonna. I dropped a quick, a hint in my last video, and that was kind of a, if you want to know about this, here's where you can find out. Yeah. But I don't want to alienate my entire audience by just saying, this is what I'm doing with my personal life.
Yeah, to be blunt, you're making so much money out of YouTube now that you're going to buy a second house and fix that up just to make YouTube videos. I've got the general gist of it.
That's right. So the Ferrari's parked in the drive
on bricks because it's the northeast, obviously.
Obviously, yeah. And this house, obviously, you can never have enough houses. So there's a nice little mansion down the road, swimming pool. And, I'm raking it in from YouTube. Yeah,
you'll soon get that knocked into shape. Now, in all seriousness, you've decided to go full-time on YouTube. You're going to knock the cabinet making and carpentry and whatever we call ourselves business on the head. You're going to wind that down, or it has been being wound down to the extent
it's in the process of being wound down. Yeah,
and I've got to say, I'm kind of in the same situation. I'm doing less and less client work, less and less custom work. And there's an old joke actually. It's about drinking, boozing. It's along the lines of, if you miss a single day's work because of the drinking, it's time to give up the work. And I kind of feel the same way to an extent about YouTube and client work. The client work is just getting in the way of the YouTube work.
Yeah.
But the question that's on the tip of everybody's mind, tip on everybody's tongue is, how are you going to make it pay then? You did a great video on your Small Business Toolbox channel about, so you want to be a YouTuber, how do you make that? How do you make it pay? Which was really good, and it covered all the exactly the same kind of points that I would have said as well. Mm-hmm. But and again, I'm not in a dissimilar situation, slightly different circumstances, because my wife retired this year and we don't have a mortgage anymore, but I do have the overhead of the workshop and all that sort of stuff. And I can't quite make the numbers work out for me yet. And I'm not asking you to show your all your personal financial details, but how are you going to finance it? Because you're not going to have client work coming in, which means you don't have the expenses of that either. But
for those who don't understand how YouTube works, very briefly, you do get a bit of money from AdSense. Income, which is basically adverts that get shown against your videos.
Yeah. Those are the ones that you skip before the video starts, yeah?
Yes, exactly. Yes. And that generates a tiny fraction, fractions of pennies per view. But then there are other forms of income that you can use to kind of, and I refer to it as either wheels on the vehicle, or...
Yeah, you described it as the YouTube being the engine, but the extra bits being the wheels. And if you have enough wheels on your wagon, you can lose one or one falls off. You can still keep chucking along, basically.
Yeah, and, everything from selling the odd T-shirt on Teespring, and like all of this is like tiny, I'm lucky if I sell one T-shirt a month. It's not like
exactly.
A big...
And you don't get the 23 quid, you get...
No, you get like 50% or something,
Yeah. That's right.
Once you add up lots of income streams or lots of wheels on your vehicle, it does eventually add up to a thing that becomes sustainable. The only problem, my Gosforth Handyman channel on its own isn't sustainable, but I've got other YouTube channels, and everything collectively all has those little wheels, and they're all bringing in enough between them to just, not to replace what I was making from the woodworking business, but enough that I can potentially take a bit of a punt, take at least a year out, shut down my limited company anyway, because I didn't really need it anymore, because I originally had the limited company when I was doing loads of commercial work and stuff, and I'm not really doing that much commercial work anyway. So, worst case scenario, if things go horribly wrong and I'm just not making enough, I can always just keep doing the woodworking as a sole trader anyway. Yes. I've still got a customer base. There's still people who
there's still people waiting for you to get back to them about that alcove unit.
Yeah, I'm still getting calls and emails every day from existing customers, and I haven't really broken the news to them. So if they hear it on here first, Hi. You've all been lovely, but so eventually it just gets to that tipping point where it's like, well, I'm making enough to survive.
Yeah.
Certainly not enough that it would bring in any significant income, but enough that we can get by. And my wife works, and she's got her wage, and she's like infinitely supportive in all of this. And she's always been the rock in my crazy harebrained business ideas.
Yeah.
And eventually it just gets to that point where it's, look, I can put 100% into it and just go for it. Or I can continue as I am, where I'm kind of putting about half of my effort into two things, and both of them aren't, both of them are being held back.
Potentially fulfilling their potential. Yeah.
And it's a difficult decision, because the woodworking business was...
Well, as I said, you're in a different situation to me, because you've got relatively young children as well.
Yeah.
Schools and all the costs that they have too.
But, we went through everything with a fine-tooth comb. We worked out, what can we reduce cost-wise? If I don't have a woodworking business anymore, I don't need a truck.
Yeah.
There's 1,500 quid a year gone. Once you add up servicing, MOTs, insurance. So there's 1,500 quid a year out the equation. If I shut down the limited company, no more everything to do with the base running costs of that.
No more audited accounts.
Just keeping the company ticking over is probably best part of $2,000 a year or something. So that's $3,500 saved. We don't need as big a house as we've got at the minute, and I do genuinely want to do a renovation project, because I've been in a new build for over 6 years, and it's killing me not being able to do anything. So we can go to a smaller house, extend it, renovate it, build a smaller workshop. I don't need a particularly big workshop if I'm not making...
You haven't got a particularly big workshop.
Well, no, but I don't even need that.
Yeah.
The only reason the workshop's the size it is, because it was only the size of one garage. It was a single garage, and then I kind of took over a bit more of the double garage. But that was because I was working with quite big client projects.
Yeah. But
if I'm not building huge alcove units and stuff, a couple of workbenches will do for most of the work that I'm doing. And plus, the channel's very much, my plan is, once I get into this new property, and at the minute I don't even know what that property is going to be yet. I've got it narrowed down,
because that's going to be a heck of a search, isn't it? I mean, because you've got to fulfill all of your requirements for a bit of a fixer-upper, a renovation project, but it's got to be in the right place for schools and all the rest of it.
Exactly.
Plus, it's got to be affordable, and it's got to be livable in. You don't want to take on a complete wreck.
Yeah,
be living in a caravan for 6 months. There's a lot of boxes to tick there.
Yeah.
So that's going to be quite a lengthy search.
And we're genuinely, depending on the property that we end up in, what we might end up doing, because of it, I'm envisaging that wherever we buy is going to need a lot of work doing to it. The properties that we've looked at have all needed, stripped down to the bare bones, new central heating, rewiring, potentially extension. It's very difficult to live in a house when all of that's going on.
Yeah.
And what we would potentially do is just live in a short-term rental for 6 months.
6 months or whatever.
While I get the bulk of the work done to wherever we're moving to, so that at least floorboards aren't up and things once the kids are living there, and I can take that in.
No pressure then.
Yeah. But I can take that in the budget, would still be better off living in a short-term let, $5,000 or something to live in a short-term let for 6 months.
Sorry, northeast rental rent.
Yeah, not in London. It's at northeast yet. And would still be better off significantly better off than we are now. So we've gone through everything with a fine-tooth comb. We've done all the numbers. We can make it work. Worst case scenario, in a year's time, if it's not working out, I can start ramping the woodworking business back up again, probably just as a sole trader. But at least I won't be sitting there thinking, well, what would have happened if I'd put 100% into it,
Yeah.
And it is hard, as you were saying on your last, one of your last videos, I think your Patreon one, about how hard it is just
yes, I put a little
to get your Tuesday video out and stuff like that.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about that later. I've knocked the Tuesday videos on the head in order to put out a weekly video for my Patreon supporters. There's some choice comments on that thread as well.
I bet.
We'll come back to those
We'll
later.
save that for the after show.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let me ask you one personal question about your personal finances.
Go for it.
Have you? Because obviously you got a nice house, new build, and you're going to use the proceeds of that to buy a fixer-upper and fund the rental. Have you earmarked any of that money to help you, to keep you ticking over while the YouTube business builds more, or are you just absolutely all in on your income purely coming from YouTube and from the associated revenue, so affiliate sales and Patreon and all the rest of it?
We've got a bit put aside, but as I say, once we move, the running costs of everything would be so much lower anyway that just as long as YouTube doesn't, if my YouTube income suddenly drops in half, and by YouTube income, I'm talking about all the wheels on this vehicle, not money from YouTube.
Yes, not just to AdSense.
But if all the wheels, or 50% of the wheels fall off this vehicle of content creation, then I would probably worry a little bit, and we might have to start dipping into savings and stuff. But the likelihood of 50% dropping off
this is
that's never ever happened. But in 8 years of being on YouTube, you might get the odd 20% drop and stuff.
Yeah,
seasonally,
and this is classic business common sense. This is, spreading yourself out amongst several different potential sources of income. One of the first business management books I read was Charles Handy's The Empty Raincoat in 1993 or 4 or whatever it was, and he was all about, he called it a basket of work opportunities, instead of having, if you think about it, if you have a full-time job, then you are completely beholden to that employer. It's actually, his way of thinking was that you're much better off being self-employed effectively and having work from many different sources. And that's essentially what we try and do as well as Carpenter Cabinet Makers. We work with lots of different people. When I was a photographer, I had lots of different clients in different areas. I worked very hard to make sure that it wasn't all just from, so many self-employed people have just one client or two. And again, there's the old 80-20 rule. 80% of your work will come from 20% of your clients, but you've got to spread that out a little bit. So if you're self-employed with just 2 clients and you lose one of those, that's a real problem. Whereas, as you say, with the YouTube stuff, you've got the YouTube AdSense, the advertising revenue. You've got affiliate links. We've got Patreon. We've got merchandise sales, as modest as they are. More potential there. So, as you say, if one of those wheels falls off the wagon, you could keep ticking along, and the likelihood of or half of them going is pretty aside. On the other hand, you could be demonetized by YouTube at any time.
Yes. Could be running a kids channel.
Yeah, absolutely. Family channels. It's right up there between brave and bold.
Well, I think it's, for me, I kind of envisage there's a lot of stuff I want to do, and at the minute I just, certainly up until a couple of months ago, and knocking the client work on the head, I wasn't getting a chance to do any of it. Even just the simple stuff like having my own Gosforth Handyman website kept up to date, I've never managed to do that. It's massively out of date. My intention with that was always to have a blog article that went with every video I released, and not a chance. I'm still 150 videos out of sync or something. It's crazy.
Yeah. And again, in your small business toolbox, when you talked about this for YouTube, you said absolutely correctly that running a YouTube channel, the video is just such a tiny part of it. significant part of it. But this is an admin job.
Yeah,
make no
big
mistake.
style.
There are so many other fingers in the pie that need attending to.
And that's kind of the thing about having lots of wheels on this vehicle, and it's great, but it's a gargantuan admin task just keeping all of those wheels running. As you know yourself, even just affiliate links, affiliate links go obsolete over time, and if you've got 200 affiliate links to different products, your 200 or 300 videos that link to those products, you're potentially having to go through 200 or 300 affiliate links every now and then, check that they're all working properly, make a new link, go into your video, somehow magically know which videos used those links, because there's no easy way of searching it on YouTube.
No.
There's no search and replace functionality on YouTube. I think there might be in TubeBuddy, but even then I don't think it could do this sort of stuff. Update all the links, update them across blog articles, update them everywhere where you've mentioned the links in comments, and how far do you take it? And that's just for one little element.
Yeah.
And there are businesses that run 100% just from affiliate links. All they have is a blog, and they churn out article after article after article. They get really good Google search rankings and things, and the whole shebang is run from affiliate links. And
the Wirecutter, the famous American-based review website, gives you the best and the better and good of a whole slew of products. Every one of those links is an affiliate link.
Exactly. And this is a thing.
That's how they make the bulk of their money.
This is a thing that's gone on for years and years as well, and I think it's only coming to public attention now. But even daft little things like if you go on holiday somewhere and the holiday company says, "Oh, here's a bus that you need to book to get from the resort to somewhere else," and you click their link, that'll be an affiliate link where they get some commission off the bus booking, this is a thing that's existed forever. It's a really neat, nice model, because it means that you're not having to get bombarded with advertisements, which is kind of a scattergun approach of let's just hit everyone whether or not they're interested in something or not. And affiliate stuff, you only get rewarded if the person buys it, which it's the most fair way of handling advertising, full stop, in my view. If someone wants to buy it, they click on the link and the manufacturer passes a couple of quid your way to thank you for it.
Absolutely. A couple of quid, that'll be the day. Unfortunately, here in the UK, we do lag behind, certainly the US, in that really the only companies that are on board with affiliate links are Amazon and eBay.
Oh, tell us about
it. So there is so much stuff that we could link to elsewhere, and the companies just don't seem to understand it, or just aren't interested. If it's too much work for them, or whatever else, I don't know. It does seem bizarre because as small, certainly, but definitely influencers as we are, we can drive some sales.
Yeah.
That's we are good at that.
I get immensely frustrated by that, because I'm not going to promote another company for free, full stop. And
no,
it does. Okay, maybe that's a bit extreme, but generally speaking, if it's a massive conglomerate who are already making millions and millions of pounds a year, and they refuse to give me a chunk of that for referring business to them, then I'm not going to refer business to them. It's exactly the same reason, I presume, that Jimmy DeResta's painted all of his tools white, and why should you advertise giant conglomerates for free?
You YouTubers, just all thinking about money. That's all.
Yeah. But this is a thing that smaller YouTubers do need to take this seriously, because you can end up really getting used and taken advantage of by some pretty big companies who are making a lot of money off the back of you recommending their products. And I'm talking crazy amounts of money. And we've talked about it before, but I've had products where there's been 2,000 or 3,000 click-throughs. You're yourself as well.
Yes, and for some things, if it makes a good video, I don't mind too much. I'm always happy to promote sort of smaller grassroots products that do a good job. We've had a bit of a scribing week this week, and there are lots of little scribing gadgets and very British designed and made from literally one person or one-man band makers making these things. And I'm always happy to promote those because they're really good and they do a good job. But for an Amazon or an eBay or any other big company, why wouldn't there be an expectation of payment?
Exactly. I don't understand why. Yeah, and a lot of these other, like the British companies who don't operate affiliate schemes, I've been in touch with them and you just get completely ignored. And it's like, no, please carry on recommending our products for free. We're not going to pay you anything. Yeah. And with a lot of it, I've just had enough of it. It's like, well, fine, I'll just not talk about those products anymore. Or I'll just continue to link to them on Amazon or whatever. But I've been in touch with smaller companies as well. And the frustrating thing from my point of view is I know what's involved on the back end to make the affiliate thing work.
Yeah.
And normally it's a plug, well, certainly on WordPress, you install a plugin. It might cost you maybe 20 quid a month or something for the plugin. But it's very, very straightforward to set up. It's not a complicated thing to set up. And I've been in touch with medium-sized companies saying, look, where they've basically said, can we shower you with tools and you talk about them? Yeah. And then we'll reap all the...
Oh, you get a free tool?
Like, great, yeah. I'll pop off to Asda and see if I can pay them with a second-hand light drill.
Yeah.
And I've said, well, are you planning on getting anything set up? Because I don't do sponsorships, and that's a whole nother topic, but...
Yeah. That was going to be a question of mine again. We'll come back to that.
And so really, since I'm not doing sponsorships, certainly at the moment, and I'm hoping to keep it that way, affiliate stuff is the only way of making this work. And that's what I've said to them. And it's like, it's too much hassle to set up. And it's like, but you're turning over like millions of pounds a year, and all you need to do is put a 20 quid plugin onto your website. And then, as soon as you discuss the affiliate thing, conversations go dead. And it's like, but I could push loads of business your way from viewers of my channel who are happy to buy your product. But I'm not going to do it for nothing.
No.
Anyway. But yeah, the sponsorship thing. I
was just going to say, obviously, with your newfound approach to... being a full-time YouTuber, are you going to consider sponsorship? Are you just truly going to try and just keep it a sponsor-free zone, and literally you're going to be making your living from AdSense, from Patreon support, from affiliate links, from media sales, so digital stuff like plans or whatever else, and through merch, whether it's Teespring stuff or your own mugs and stickers and whatever.
My intention at the minute is to, at the point that you see sponsors appearing on my channel, all the other wheels have fallen off.
Okay.
I'll never say never, but it's literally bottom of my list of things that I want to do, just because it's such a hassle.
It's a last ditch kind of thing. Okay.
An enormous hassle. It gets you into these contractual relationships with business, and it kind of takes it almost to the point of, well, I might as well just be working for an employer. Some of the contracts that I've seen coming out from people offer, because I've had obviously offers of sponsorship and things, and you get companies saying, we'll pay you X amount, but we want to retain full IP of your videos. And it's like, what?
In which case, tell you what, go and try and have a video made for what you're paying and me, and you'll discover what the pay rates are for unionized video production.
And that's not sponsorship. That's using me as a ultra cheap video production company.
Yeah.
And really ultra cheap from what they're offering, and they want full IP. Yeah. And to the point that if they get the rights to the video, then I could get a copyright strike against my own video if I have that on my channel.
Against your own video.
Because it's not my video anymore, you know. And you get all sorts of stuff like that creeps into contracts, and eventually it's just like, no, it's more hassle than it's worth. But it can be lucrative, and there are obviously channels that make all the money off sponsorship, and I'm definitely not having a go at those channels in any way. I'm just hoping to make it work without having to go down that route. I want a stress-free, stress-free life as possible.
Okay, well, you're going to be the canary in the coal mine for many of us, I think. Watching this closely. As I said, I'm kind of heading that way myself. It's a slightly different situation, but I'm definitely winding back on the client work that I'm doing. I've got one set of wardrobes, not even proper wardrobes. They're just sort of an enclosure, a pair of sliding doors to go into an alcove because they've got hanging rails in there already. It's a bit of I don't know. It's not going to be one for the video archive, that's for sure. So I've got that to do. I've potentially got one other for an old client of mine. I've got a guy who wants me to do a study, desk and study, but he's messing about, and I think I'm going to politely decline his kind offer of making up samples of every possible variation of hardwood and lipping for the desk and some kind of sheet goods for the shelves and everything else. And other than that, I've not got much on. I've got a whole ton of videos planned that I haven't had time to do. Story of our life.
Yes.
And, like yourself, I'm in a bit of a weird place with YouTube generally, insofar as, and I've talked about this before, and I'm not going to go on about it again, but my subscriber growth has just plateaued completely tailed off. At the start of the year, I think you do as well, we set ourselves targets for what we hope to achieve during the year. The last time we spoke, I've gone through the old podcast, you were in a bit of a flat spot as well, but over summer, your subscriber growth has gone really well. You're romping ahead over 55,000 subscribers now, or thereabouts. I think you set a target of 60,000 for the end of the year.
Yeah, it's so variable though. You still get these peaks and troughs, and at the minute I'm back into a trough where things have just died.
Yeah, well, mine's completely plateaued. I talked about this before. It's like somebody would flicked a switch off really early in the year, and the subscriber growth has really flattened off. And I'll certainly miss the target, which was to gain another 20,000 subscribers for this year. Having gained 17,000 in my second year, I thought that was a reasonable target to have. I don't think I'll even match year 2 at the end of this year. But that doesn't matter that much because the whole overall picture is actually pretty good. The channel itself has had some very solid viewing numbers. The retention, all the things that you have to monitor as a YouTube channel, retention, click-through rates, all that sort of stuff is really good. I don't know why the subscriber growth has tailed off, but it has. So I've been experimenting a little bit over summer. I tried some paid downloads, which was interesting. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later. And I am promoting the Patreon side of things a bit more. And as you said earlier on, I put a video out a couple of weeks back just to explain really that why I'm going to pull back from doing the Tuesday videos, because the Tuesday videos that I do always started out as a Tuesday tip kind of thing, just a quick 2-minute tip, and then they grew into something else, and now we get to the stage where whenever I put out a 2-minute Tuesday tip, I get a load of complaints. Oh, you should call yourself the 2-minute workshop, not 10-minute workshop, because obviously these folks haven't been around for long enough to know the backstory.
Yeah.
But I've decided to stop doing them. I've been doing 2 videos a week for 2 years, and I'm going to I am doing a video a week for my Patreon supporters, which is sometimes a bit of special content for them. Sometimes it's behind the scenes stuff. Sometimes it's just a general kind of chatty week in the workshop kind of vlog, and sometimes it's a combination of all of those. But I need to take a step back off the hamster wheel of doing 2 videos a week in order to do that extra one for the Patreon supporters. And as a consequence of that, the Patreon support has definitely grown. We are definitely getting more I'm definitely getting more Patreon supporters at a higher level, at a higher rate, to the extent now where my Patreon support is bringing in probably half as much again as YouTube ads. So it's much more significant in terms of the growth of the YouTube business, if you want to call it that.
I definitely think there's been a tipping point where people, certainly in the UK, are starting to understand Patreon and the value of Patreon a lot more. And I've noticed that as well, where people are coming across onto the channel where they've said, "Oh, we've thought about this for a long time," and they've decided to take the plunge. And please, folks, support this show on Patreon as well, because it is literally Patreon that's keeping this going.
Absolutely.
I think people are just taking that side of things, or getting a better understanding of how that side of things works.
I do think you've got to be... I always had, when I first started doing Patreon, and I didn't monetize the YouTube channel at all for the first year, and then I started doing Patreon and switched on monetization at the end of year one. So I've only had a couple of years of this. And when I first started doing this, people were, the supporters I had were just happy to contribute something to help me keep making videos. Whereas the change has happened over the last year or so, that folks are happy to contribute, but they're expecting more for it, which is absolutely fine. That's perfectly reasonable expectation. And certainly doing things like how much did it cost videos, again, they're not widely watched, but they are popular. They're the kind of thing that do bring in new Patreon supporters. And again, I'm sort of feeling my way with this myself, but certainly the sort of chatty vlog type videos seem to go down quite well, because I actually quite enjoy doing those, because they're a bit more casual, a bit looser. It's just chatting in the workshop kind of thing, sticking a little camera in the corner while you empty your vacuum or whatever else.
And that's a really nice thing about Patreon stuff as well, that you're not beholden to the algorithm anymore, and I love that.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether you put out a short video or a long video, or the edit's not quite perfect. It doesn't matter, because you're no longer restricted by, am I going to get watch time? Am I going to get like this ideal? Do I have to promote something at the beginning of the video that makes people watch all the way at the end of the video, so that all this stuff that has to go through your mind?
Yeah, be sure to stay with us, because at the end of the video we'll be telling you the magic secret of how to grow a beanstalk from just beans.
Yeah, and it's so much more relaxed putting the content out on Patreon when none of that stuff matters, and it's just like, it's quite nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting. Well, we shall see where things go over this coming year, and doubtless.
Yes, I mean, have you set a time limit to your experiment? Are you going to do it for 12 months and see, or
it's just keeping?
So if you go bankrupt in 6,
Not really. It's keeping an eye on the stats. That's the key thing. Is just I've got everything. I'm a bit of a fanny when it comes to that sort of stuff. And I've got everything graphed, and I'm just, because you can look at things in the short term and it's like, oh my God, everything's going horribly wrong. But actually, you then look at a graph can dispel so many myths about how a business is performing. And you can think that a business isn't doing very well, and then you graph your growth over time, and it's like, oh wow, if it keeps going like that, things could actually work out. And I think that was kind of the difficult decision for me with the joinery business and YouTube, because both graphs were going up.
Yeah.
If the joinery business was just flatlining, it would have been a much easier decision to say, well, just knock that on the head and do something else.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that people need to understand. I'm not ditching the woodworking business because it's not making any money. To the contrary, it was doing really well.
Yeah.
But for me to grow that into anything bigger, I'd need a bigger workshop, I'd need to take on staff, and it would grow into this animal. I've already been there and done that. I don't want to employ staff again. I'm at a stage of my life at the minute where I just want to keep things just me, nice and simple. Mm-hmm. I want to see my kids as much as possible in the very short space of time that I've got before you know, they leave home and stuff.
They disappear off to uni or wherever else, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my son's a teenager now, and when I started all this, you know, well, not quite a toddler, but not far beyond a toddler when I started all of this, because you got to bear in mind, I've been on YouTube for 8 years trying to suss all this out.
Yeah, I always forget that, I have to say.
Yeah.
You've been around for a long time, and you've had a lot of growth in the last couple of years. And it really does take that long sometimes.
I have many other failed channels. If you want to see the truth behind this, you know, just go and look at my Beginner Drums and Andy Mac Drums channel, and you'll see what happens when you don't do things quite right. But that's another whole story. So that's...
I'm going to say, can you feel free to say no? But you say you obviously got your Small Business Toolbox channel, which is growing, and you've got your Andy Mac Drums channel, which is a bit of a sleeper. You got the Gosforth Handyman channel. Yeah. Well, what's the other one then? That's
so the Beginner Drums one.
Do you want to talk about that or say no?
Well, all it is, it was an offshot of the Andy Mac Drums channel, basically. When my first channel on YouTube was Andy Mac Drums, where I was just finding my feet, recording a few drum covers, and doing a few other bits and pieces, and then I started putting together more structured training content in terms of how to play the drums, because at that time I was teaching drums in part-time in the evenings when I wasn't working.
Yeah.
So I started doing much more structured stuff, and I put the more structured stuff onto a separate channel, which was Beginner Drums. And I put a crazy amount of effort into trying to build that channel up. And looking back, I did everything wrong, you know.
Yeah.
I would, rather than putting out videos once a week, I would make 30 videos and then put them all out at the same time, because I didn't know.
So you got a big spike in viewing figures and then flat,
you know, everything about how I did stuff. Thumbnails are terrible. They still are terrible. It's still on my to-do list to go around and sort the thumbnails on that channel, because, you know, that might actually bring it back to life a little bit. Everything is just wrong. But it was a massive learning curve.
Yeah.
But then the core thing that made me kind of press pause on that was when I realised, hold on a minute, why is my CPM rate so low on this channel? In other words, the amount that I'm getting back off AdSense was like really, really low.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I set up the Gosforth Handyman channel where the CPM rate was like way higher, you know, 5 times higher in terms of what I was making back for the same amount of views.
Yeah.
And the penny dropped. It's like, there's no one spending money on advertising for drums. Every drum shop's going out of business.
Yeah.
You know, every week I was hearing of more and more music instrument shops that were going out of business. They certainly don't have money to spend on advertising.
Yeah.
And it's like, I would have to completely rethink my approach to that channel, because advertising ain't going to do it, because the advertisers don't have any money.
Yeah.
And that's a losing battle from square one. Yeah. And there's potentially other things that I can do around that, you know, maybe membership courses or stuff, but I haven't got time. That's not a core focus anymore for now. I might come back to it. Maybe.
Yeah. It's fascinating when you start looking at stuff and what makes a good and profitable YouTube channel. It's absolutely not what we're doing. You know, it's picking a popular subject and doing a talking head video about it. I was chatting to my dad at the weekend, and I'm not going to get into this, but he's very upset about Brexit and, you know, the whole shenanigans that are going on there. And he was saying he watches this guy on YouTube. I've never heard of him. So I had a quick look at his channel, and he does roughly a 15-minute talking head video. Mostly his pieces are just introductions to other clips that he's pulled in from BBC Newsnight or the news or whatever else. I presume he's getting to use those under fair use because he's commenting about them. And he's putting together this 15-minute vlog, and he's getting 100,000 views on those regularly. Yeah? Because it's a popular topic, and he's doing that daily.
Yeah.
He's doing a daily 15-minute vlog on a popular topic. 100,000 views is going to bring in, just from AdSense, about 150 quid, 160 quid, somewhere around there, daily. That's not a bad little business.
Yeah.
To be doing 5 days a week.
And you compare that the amount of effort it takes for us to put a video together.
Exactly. The actual costs are him sitting in his front room talking to, might be his phone, I don't know, and just cobbling together clips from Newsnight to whatever make the point that he's trying to make. A smart business move. Much tougher to get anything like that sort of interest. I'd be delighted with 100,000 views to a video, but I can only do one a week. So I add that up, But
that's the thing. When it takes 2 or 3 days to put a video together, in terms of like from the birth of that video to like having a project that you can actually film in the first place, getting everything actually filmed through to the edit and everything else, and everything on the back end that you don't see in terms of promoting it and stuff like that. And then, as you say, you compare that to a guy chatting in front of a mobile phone or something like that. And to draw a parallel back to my beginner drums channel, if you imagine the amount of effort that we put into a video and then multiply that by about 10, that's what the beginner drums channel was, because I had 4 cameras running at the same time, 8-channel multi-track audio, everything synchronized. So basically 12 channels between audio and video. Yeah. And then the edit would have picture-in-picture between the 4 cameras where,
That's an editing nightmare.
Stuff split on the screen. You'll see if you go to the channel. And the effort it took. One video would take about a week to put together, at least. Yeah. And it was just, hold on a minute, but no one's spending money on drum advertising. What's the point in this? Eventually you have to kind of look at the numbers and realise, that's not going to work in its current business model.
Yeah. Yes,
but,
indeed.
Should we do some follow-up? We're nearly an hour in.
Let's, yes.
We had a message from Jeff chatting about retirement and pensions.
Yeah, retirement and pensions,
He said, I've just been listening to your back catalogue of podcasts and I found much to enjoy. I did find myself disagreeing with one throwaway item mentioned in the podcast, episode 15, and we were saying we won't be able to retire until we're 70. And he was saying, surely one of the great benefits of a one-man band is that you can retire any time. And the key is that you must make it possible by saving enough so you can afford to retire. So from my perspective, when I can't remember who even said it, but all I meant was that'll be when you'll get your state pension.
Exactly.
I don't mean that's when you actually retire, because I would imagine the state pension by the time I retire will not be worth anything.
Yeah.
Because they keep on upping the age threshold anyway, so it'll probably be 80 by the time I retire.
Yeah.
And so all I meant by the 70 comment was that's when you get your state pension. Or I think it's 67 at the minute. Or something.
I know, and I know what Jeff means by this. But I have to say, I do think it's a little bit simplistic to say, well, you can retire when you want because you're self-employed. That's like saying, well, you can take a day off whenever you want because you've got no boss to tell you to. Well, yeah, okay, but if you don't get the work done, you're not going to get paid. And if the reason for doing the work that you do is to earn a shilling, then you've got to complete the work and get it out of the door. So yes, absolutely, it is within our control and within our power to decide these things. But absolutely, you need to have stacked up enough along the way to make sure that you can retire at a point that's convenient to you.
You need to have a plan.
But yeah,
definitely, and whether that's pensions or property or this. And I think this is one of the reasons that I don't like. A couple of people commented on my joinery running costs business, the workshop running costs video that I did, saying, you've missed out pensions. And it's like, yeah, but life doesn't necessarily revolve around pensions. There's many other things that you can do. And it opens up such a complicated can of worms that it's easier for me to just say, I haven't catered for pensions, but you need to cater for something, but I'm not including that in the figures because it's too complicated. It's too big a subject to get into. There's so many things that you can do to plan for retirement.
That was a great video, by the way. I really, really enjoyed that.
Thank you.
Going through the various workshop sizes and all that sort of stuff. much longer and much more complicated to put together, I think, than perhaps it may have looked if you just watched the video. It was
a big video. Yeah. That was a week-long project. It took a day just going out, looking at the workshops and filming them and stuff like that. And
because you've got to contact whoever the estate agent is and get access to them and all the rest of it, and
just get a viewing and going off and driving into the country just because I thought that'll be a bit more interesting than me just sitting in front of a chair. So it's like trying to split it up into something that actually. Was that on the other video?
That was on the other one, I think. But again, a classic talking head video, but made a bit more interesting by going on a journey as well.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Next bit of follow-up we got was from Gareth. Gareth says, thanks very much for the podcast. Both of you have given me confidence to do some woodwork. You bought some tools and some bits of wood to play with, but the prompt for this email is that he was able to fix his daughter's playhouse, and he has even started making a new door from scratch. Hearing my 4-year-old daughter boast that her daddy is making her a special door and fixing her playhouse is worth more than all the money in the world, although now my wife has told him that he's making some planters and some garden furniture. So it says, thank you for the lessons that you taught him. We are great teachers. Thank you very much, Gareth. That's very, very good to hear. Really, really nice to get a good story from some of the things that we do on YouTube. It's really good.
That's really what it's all about, isn't it? Comments like that just mean the world. That is just brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. There is no better feeling than having your daughter saying, like, oh, my daddy made this. It's just awesome. Or Mammy.
Yeah.
And we got a comment from DBT85 about state of new builds. Hi, chaps. In episode 22, Andy mentioned some of the daft things done in his own new build, no earth in metal back boxes, etc.
Yeah.
This is just as true for the huge nationwide firm that converted my in-laws' farm barns into a house, 2 holiday cottages, blah, blah, blah. So many issues that it came to a settlement of over £100,000. Obviously, he's not allowed to name them, or there's gag clauses as part of all of this sort of settlement. But by the very nature of the fact,
6 years of grief and disruption they had to come out.
Someone I know is going through exactly the same thing with builders at the minute, and it's a nightmare. And an extension that should have taken 2 weeks has now dragged on for past 4 months, and it's crazy.
Jeez.
There's some very, very, very good tradesmen out there, and there are some very, very bad tradesmen out there. If I hear the excuse of a relation has died one more time for why a project's been delayed, and it's one of those which I've heard it now on multiple people who have had work done where the tradesman has used the excuse of someone's passed away in the family, and I'm not believing it anymore.
Yeah,
I'm afraid. Call me cynical, but when you hear it on every single person who's dealt with a particular company, either that or they've got an awful lot of relations who are passing away. In which case, my condolences.
Or in very poor health. Absolutely. Sorry to hear.
So he was basically saying specs saying 200 mil of insulation should have been used, but only 25 mil used. Wrong sort of lighting used in the bathroom, which basically meant it wasn't properly waterproof because they didn't have the right bulbs. Didn't have the right fittings in stock, so they just fitted the wrong fittings instead.
Yeah.
Upstairs, tiled floors laid on normal chipboard instead of proper ply, so the tiles are all coming loose and things, and manhole covers that couldn't take the weight of a car, and just
horrible,
awful stuff. And he said that he's very keen DIYer and has done multiple kitchens, bathrooms, and everything up to that point. Every single thing that was done wrong in these buildings, even he could have done it better, which is it's just frustrating. It's frustrating. As I say, there's so many good tradesmen out there, and they get such a bad reputation based on the bad tradespeople who are out there. So,
well, unfortunately, like YouTube comments, you remember the bad ones, not the good ones. Sadly,
yeah, one of the frustrating things in all of this, and it comes back to reviews and how reviews these days are just nonsense. And with the person that I know who had this nightmare experience. They found their builder off one of these kind of directories. I'll not say which one, but they had 5-star reviews and everything on this directory. Amazing work, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Their experience was absolute nightmare. You know, everything about how things have been handled has just been terrible. And I said, well, are you going to leave a bad review? And they just said, oh, I think we'd rather just leave no review. We don't want any backlash.
Yeah.
And I think that is, I'm seeing that time and time again, where it's just making a mockery of the whole review thing. If the bad companies aren't getting bad reviews because the clients are frightened to leave a bad review.
Bad reviews, yeah.
And I'm not quite sure what the answer to that is. If anyone's got any good suggestions.
No, I was waiting, hoping you were going to come up with one. Never mind, okay.
It might be a topic for another day, but one suggestion that I would potentially think about is using some sort of project manager, like a middleman to manage the build, where there's no implications if the project management firm leaving bad reviews, and plus they would only deal with builders that they know and trust. And because I think part of the problem is that, certainly in my experience of people who I know who have had problems, is that they're being told stuff from the builder that is clearly BS, but they think it's normal practice. Yeah. And as I say, we'll maybe talk about that on a future episode because I've got some stories there.
Yeah, again, I can't quite remember when we discussed it in the last podcast, but I did talk about my sister's house build, and they, it's a substantial build, and I still don't think it's quite resolved. I'm seeing them in a few weeks, so we'll try and find out. But a big build, a big building firm, project managed properly, professionally, and just every possible thing that could go wrong goes wrong. The big firm subcontracts to people who don't know what they're doing. Underground heat source pumps fitted to the wrong spec, so the whole house didn't get heated properly. They've had to put a second auxiliary pump in, which now works, thankfully. But just a litany of disastrous results. And as I say, as far as I know, it still hasn't been signed off yet. Years. 3 years on. So,
and is this an independent project management firm they're going through, or is it a builder project management?
No, totally independent. Full, expensive project management. It was a big chunk of the budget to get this guy in to project manage.
That knocks my idea on the head then.
And the building, the building firm is, a well-respected, mostly dealing with sort of private hospitals and fairly substantial building projects. This was their one of their first forays into high-end house building, which may be a question mark as well, maybe a warning sign, but just ridiculous. The whole process has been really, really shoddy.
It's frustrating, and not knowing where to go to find out the reputable building firms. If you can't rely on reviews, then what do? You can't just rely on word of mouth. It's fine if you're in the business and you know people and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure what the answer is. But I'm hearing it more often than not at the minute. To draw a parallel, a neighbour of ours had an extension done by a local, like a glazier firm who also does, is it orangery or orangery?
Fairly sure it's orangery, but yeah.
An orangery. Anyway, they had a fancy conservatory built.
Yeah, that's the one.
And the whole job was done in 2 weeks. It was just amazing. It was like working. I was watching them because I was out working and stuff, in and out while they were doing it, and you could just tell they were absolute professionals on what they were doing. They were really polite in terms of making sure that nothing was a hassle for the neighbours, keeping everything out the road, asking permission before putting anything anywhere that might in any way block anyone in or anything like that.
Yeah.
And they were done and dusted in 2 weeks, and awesome job. And so how do you differentiate between that and then someone else doing exactly the same job but taking 4 months to do it?
Yeah. I don't know. Yes. Do it yourself.
Yeah. There must be an answer to it. If anyone's got any good suggestions, please drop us a note. If you go to measuringuppodcast.com and go to the contact form on there, you can get in touch. Drop us a note if you've got any fresh ideas that don't revolve around fake reviews and things like that as to how this can be resolved. Because there must be a solution to it.
There's got to be a solution for it, but I don't know what it is. So let's get the hive mind working on this and see if you can come up with a good idea. Drop us a line, let us know.
Definitely.
Big news, Andy Mack, big news. We're not on YouTube anymore. Not us personally, but the podcast. We've decided to pull back from the putting the podcast on YouTube because it's a lot of extra effort to do it. YouTube isn't really the medium for it. This is a podcast and you should be listening to it in a podcast player or through the website if you have to, but really it's supposed to be listened to on a podcast player. We put it out on YouTube simply because it's, we are known for having YouTube channels and it's perhaps might be an obvious place to look for it, but it's really not a very happy place to have a purely audio medium. We have no particular intentions to start doing a video podcast because that would be far more complicated. So we've decided we're putting this episode up, but this will be the last episode that we're going to put up on our YouTube channel. And everything else going forwards will simply be through the website or through the podcast player of your choice, or indeed the many various other ways of listening to the podcast through Stitcher or Spotify or many.
There's so many ways of listening to podcasts, and unless, as you say, unless it's specifically a video podcast where people chatting in a room type podcast, which is being filmed, fair enough. I can kind of vaguely understand that being on YouTube. But the vast majority of podcasts aren't on YouTube anyway. If you're just relying on YouTube for podcasts, you're missing out on a whole world of podcasts. So for the tiny fraction of people who do listen to the show on YouTube compared to how many listen through proper podcast players, it's just not worth it. And plus, it kind of complicates matters a little bit as well because people start sending comments in via YouTube and then we don't want to reply to those because we don't want to encourage more people to be using a platform that, you don't really need to use. But then some of the comments are quite interesting and it's like, so it's easier to just knock that on the head. And so from now on, you need to get a podcast player. I'm actually releasing a video all about that, which should be out by now. If you're not sure about what a podcast player is and stuff like that.
You're doing videos about podcast players.
Kind of, yeah. It's a bit of a promo for this, but anyway. It's a video about how to listen to a podcast, basically. And
okay.
But
that's a good audible, a good video.
Yes.
A good visual. Yeah, good. Okay, cool.
But it should be out by now.
Look forward to listening to that.
At the time that we're recording this.
Okay, got it. Yeah, right. Podcast land, the podcast laps.
Although, which is funny because that video is nearly ready to go, and my plan was to put it out next week as a bit of a promo for this show going live. And now my main podcast player, which is Pocket Casts, has completely changed their pricing model overnight, and it basically means that 50% of my video that I've already filmed is completely wrong now, so I'm going to have to change it all.
Oh no. I saw that on Twitter, but I'm not a Pocket Cast user, so I don't know what it was about.
Oh, there's been outrage about it. It's so funny, but if people can moan about something, they'll find something to moan about.
Surely they weren't charging for it, were they?
Well, it's a podcast player that you have to pay for, but it's only a couple of dollars. But basically, they've made it free, which is great. but there was an add-on where you get a desktop client and some other functionality, and they've now made that into a subscription model. Whereas before, I think you used to have to pay $10 for the desktop client, and now it's like $1 a month or something.
Yeah, if it's something you use, just pay for it. But any
I have no problem with that.
Possible opportunity to complain about something, then people will.
And they were everyone who had bought the desktop client, they were giving them it for free for 3 years, to say your subscription won't kick in for 3 years' time, and people still complained. So now they've relented and said that they're going to do the subscription thing. Basically, if you've already got the desktop client, they're saying it's now free for life, and I don't think they needed to do that, to be honest. But I think it was just to stop people moaning on. But it's a business at the end of the day. But anyway, so what have you got coming up then? You've got I've got actual jobs.
I've got actual jobby jobs. I've got I've got these two little sort of silly non-wardrobe-y type things, just wardrobe enclosures, which I pulled all the MDF in yesterday. I've got to get that sort of. I've realised as well I haven't ordered their sliding doors, so I've got to get the sliding door track in, so I know what height they need to be at. So I get those trimmed down. So I've got to do that before I can paint them. But they're not going in for a couple of weeks. I've got those. I've got this flipping desk thing, which I'm not really terribly keen on. This office study refurb. I may just knock that on the head and sell it. Thanks, but no. I've got potentially a wardrobe and some shelves for somebody I've done a lot of work for. I did a silly little job video where I had to match some moulding, some architrave, to a profile that they already had. This was the same client, basically. So I've known them a long time. That may well happen. But other than that, I've not got much in terms of jobby job type work. So I'll be sort of rattling on with my YouTube videos. I've got a sander comparison, which is shot and ready to go. I've got to say, I don't have anything coming out on this Tuesday. Having announced that I was going to pull back from the Tuesday videos, I then promptly went and did a Tuesday video because I've done a 3-video scribing series. First one was last Friday. We're recording this on the Friday when part 3 will come out. Part 2 came out on Tuesday, and it's just bombed completely. It's been absolutely disastrous. So I don't know how part 3 is going to go down.
On the scribing one?
Yeah. Part 1 did really well. Again, I'm getting 10, 12, 14,000 views per video at the minute, which is pretty good for a channel with my number of subscribers. It's quite a high, it's getting on for 30%.
It's really good
viewing rate. And then you get one like the part 2 of the scribing one, which gets 5,000. I think it's joint 10th of my top 10 of the last 28 days.
And it's such a frustrating thing when you see that it's the first thing that hits you in the YouTube creator dashboard.
Yeah. Basically, that's right. All those red arrows pointing down, views are down, money's down,
it's horrible.
Everything's down.
I hate it. It's come to the point where I'm not looking at the stats anymore.
Yeah,
because
me neither.
I found that logging into the dashboard and all you're seeing is all these like red down arrows. I found it really disheartening. It's like, oh, for God's sake. And I had a stream of videos in a row that every video I put out was just red arrow after red arrow on every video. It was almost making me make more and more videos. And I think, if anything, that was probably damaging the channel. We'll talk about this on the after show, because I've got an interesting thing to tell you about that. But so it's not too much inside baseball. But
yes, sorry, it has been a little bit YouTube heavy this episode. But then there's a lot to unpack, a lot to discuss. Let's talk before we get into the after show. Let's talk quickly about what you did over summer, because first show of the season, we've had a slightly extended summer break. What have you been up to?
My bumper fell off my truck.
Yeah, I saw that. You made a video out of that.
That's out tonight. What else happened? What has happened, Donna? We went camping, and we got so wet whilst camping, we literally packed up the tent, put it in the bin, and booked ourselves into a travel lodge.
Wow. Where was this?
Lake District, as you can probably...
Oh, right. Oh, well, Leo, there you go. There's a reason it's called the Lake District, so where all the shades of green come from.
It was Grisdale, between Coniston and Windermere, I think. And beautiful, beautiful part of the world, and
it is lovely.
Yeah, stunning, absolutely stunning. But the first day it was thunderstorms and the water was just dripping in through a tent relentlessly, and it was quite good fun. And it was like, oh, look at this, it's so rainy. Yeah. By the second day, it hadn't stopped raining, and it was turning more like Glastonbury and everything. Yeah, it was a comedy of errors. A cat broke into our tent and ate all of our bread. There was some sort of massive wasp infestation, so even on the brief occasions that it was sunny and you'd sit outside, there were so many wasps that we would just have to go back into the tent again.
Oh, wow.
And then by the second night, it was another night of just relentless rain, and eventually it was like this, and as I say, water coming in through the tent, because our tent had, it was quite an old tent, it'd seen better days, and eventually it's like, this isn't fun anymore. The tent's had it. It's not fixable, and it's not even worth the effort of trying to fix it. It's old, it's tattered, packed up the whole lot, put it in the bin. But loads of people had just left their tents and just buggered off, and I thought, that's a bit cheeky.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they literally just left their tents in the field and like Glastonbury style, which I think, at least put it in the bin if it's no good anymore. So booked ourselves into a little hotel, and it was lovely.
Yeah, nice.
It was so nice.
Heating.
I've never been so happy to just fall onto a dry bed and have a shower and not have a cat eating our bread buns in the middle of the night. So, what about you?
We had a nice summer break. We were away. My wife retired in July, and she retired, and we went on holiday almost straight away afterwards. So we were away for a couple of weeks, which was lovely. I came back, had a big job on, took 2 to 3 weeks to sort that out, and then took a week off. Then we had a later summer break. We have because the kids are grown and gone these days, we try and have either a week or a long weekend, sort of bank holiday weekend in August, away with them. And last year, when we did that, it was a dead ringer for your camping trip. I've never been so wet before. But this year, it was like today. It was absolutely glorious. Yeah. So we had a weekend in Center Parcs, which is very nice. A weekend in Center Parcs, which is lovely. Discovered the joys of electric bicycles.
Oh,
electric bikes, just fantastic. What an amazing technology. Absolutely, sir. My son's bought one. He's got one, and he brought it with him. And it's, obviously the ones we get at Center Parcs are a little bit sort of clunky. His is like a sports bike, and it's absolutely fantastic. Not cheap, but amazing piece of kit.
A good friend of mine set up his own business selling electric bikes. Yeah. Morpeth Electric Bicycle Company, and it's just him and one other lad. It's not a big company, so I'll give it. Hello, Pete. How are you doing? Well, he gave us a shot on a couple of the really high-end bikes, your $3-4 grand ones.
Yeah.
And wow, they are amazing, absolutely amazing. Interesting to see where that whole industry goes. Obviously, the UK is not the best for bike lanes and stuff like that.
No, that's right. Well, we had a week away in Whitstable. My wife's retired, so we're taking a lot more time off. We're going away a lot more. Which again is a good reason to wind down the jobby job work kind of things. And we hired bikes just to go down the coast a little way. And when we brought them back, the owner of the bike hire place was there. I was saying, have you got any? We're saying that our son's got an electric bike. He said, oh yeah, I've got a. Everybody keeps asking about them. I've got to get some. He said, but the trouble is they're so expensive. And I had a quick look around, and the sort of bikes the high end regular bikes that we had are like sort of £300. You could easily, relatively easily get 10 of those into your bicycle hire stock. If you want an electric bike, they're 2,000 to 3,000. So even with a bit of discount, that same £3,000 is only going to get you 2 bikes into your hire stock. That's quite a big outlay if you're a cycle rental firm.
Yeah.
Just to have available to offer. Interesting.
Well, because when we were in the lakes, actually, there was a cycle, and I noticed that a lot of the cycle places, the bigger ones, are now most of the stock seems to be electric bikes. And as you say, it's such an investment because they're not cheap. I don't know if they have like special hire ones that maybe get mass produced and they're not quite as good as your normal ones that maybe they get them a bit cheaper or something. I don't know. But
I don't know.
It's an interesting business model because that's an awful lot of hires you've got to do before you cover the cost of a bike that's going to need constantly maintained and things.
Yeah.
But yeah, very, very tempted to get one day.
And of course, they're all electric. Yeah, I mean, they're very clever. I mean, things obviously because it's an electric bike, it has lights built in, which you think, oh, that's a good idea. And you get a little clip-on screen that tells you, speed and your distance and all those other state of the battery and whatever else.
Yeah,
very, very clever, very sophisticated, but not cheap. I think my son paid a couple of grand for his. So yeah. We're having a little bit of a late summer heat wave now. I think this is the last weekend where it's going to be really nice. So try and enjoy that a little bit before the nights start drawing in. In fact, it's getting cooler in the mornings. It's lovely during midday, during the middle of the day. But first thing in the morning, it's a little bit chilly. So
we've had frost up here.
Winter is. You have? Oh goodness! No, we haven't had any of that
in the northeast. But yeah, it's beautiful today. It's gorgeous. Yeah, most of the stuff that I've been sorting out is getting the house ready to sell and all that side of things. And
yes, of course.
One of the whole deliberations, and honestly, it's like the most complicated slide puzzle in the world, or trying to move house with a workshop and kids and while winding down a business and setting up a new business, kind of,
Yeah, so it's, Joel, the balls are in the air. What are you going to do about the workshop? Are you going to reconvert it to a garage, or are you going to leave it as it is and have it as an added workshop?
I'm giving people the option because what I don't want, first of all, I don't want to strip it all out quite yet because I don't know how long it's going to take for our house to sell.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Having the workshop there is very handy for a lot of the jobs that I'm even just doing in my own house, and obviously for making videos as well. Although I've got no shortage of videos that I can film outside the workshop, so that I'm not too bothered about that.
Yeah.
But it's trying to get the timing right of when do I start dismantling it.
Yeah.
Because I've got nowhere to put everything. Once it's dismantled, everything's just going to sit in the garage and it'll look awful. Whereas at the minute, it looks, even if you don't want a workshop, it looks quite impressive. So I'm kind of saying to people, I'll be stripping all this out, or if you want it left at and leave it,
Yeah.
I would probably rather strip it out because I'll use almost everything for the new workshop where I'm moving to. But equally, for the sake of 500 quid's worth of plywood or whatever, in the scheme of things, whether I leave it or take it, it basically doesn't make much difference. I would certainly, obviously, be taking the benches and everything else. I was thinking at the back of my mind of just not telling anyone I was moving and literally just starting up in a new workshop and see if I can get the new workshop to look exactly like the old workshop.
Exactly like the old workshop.
But I think the practicalities of that aren't really going to work. So I'm going to have to just come clean and say, no, I am moving. There's probably going to be a period of time. But I'm looking at this very long term.
Sure.
This isn't a 6 month. This is a 5-10 year plus thing at least. I can see 5-10 years down the line of videos that I can be making. I can get 3 or 4 years of videos just out of renovating this property that we're moving to. So, and that on its own will probably
Swiss Family McClellan restoration couple.
Well, yeah, to a degree. So we'll see where things go. But yeah, so the workshop's very much in limbo at the minute. I can't really start dismantling it yet, and I don't want to until we're at the point where I need to, and I might not have to. So it's, as I say, it's one of these kind of slightly complicated things of, well, it's just a bit of a chicken and egg thing of getting depending on where we end up.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to be building a workshop at the bottom of the garden. I don't know if I'm going to be converting the garage. I don't know if it's going to have a garage that's already fine the way it is and all I need to do is clad the walls a bit. So we shall see. Lots of unknowns.
Yeah, fascinating.
But it's exciting.
Exciting and terrifying.
It is a little bit, but it's fun. On that note, shall we wrap it up?
Yes, let's say a quick shout out to all of our wonderful Patreon supporters. I'll start. Let's say thank you to Chris, to Paul at Cunningham Customs Creations, Peter Tone, Dominique Gudjinson, CJ, Tony Carnell, James Taylor, Phil Wilson, James Ian Wilson, and Jay Wong.
And I would also like to thank Brendan at the Shades Workshop, Michael Stringer, Jacek Sadlon, John T. Lynch, Tim Bowers, Douglas Steele, Ben Harker, Sam Valiant, Gareth Hopkins, and Andrew Cartledge. And remember, you can get your name onto our list of random shout-outs for the show if you're supporting us at over $3 over on Patreon.
As always, thank you so much for listening. If you have the time and the energy, please head on over to iTunes and give us a rating or a review if possible. We have over 230 positive 5-star reviews over there on iTunes at the moment, and anything you can leave for us really does help to push us further up the stack on iTunes. You can support the show and get the after show at patreon.com/measuringuppodcast. Andy, where can people follow you?
You can find me on Gosforth Handyman on YouTube and Gosforth Handyman on Instagram and Gosforth Andy on Twitter. And where do we find you, Peter?
I am 10 Minute Workshop on YouTube. I'm at 10 Minute Workshop on Instagram and at 10 Minute Shop on Twitter. You can post feedback for the show at Measuring Up PC on Twitter, or indeed use the web contact form at measuringuppodcast.com. Okay, we're also on Instagram at Measuring Up Podcast.
And we've got so much stuff planned for this season of the podcast. We're going to be chatting about all sorts of things, some of the funniest and weirdest jobs that we've worked on over the years, and limited company versus being self-employed, and what our typical day is like. And we've got so many things planned for this season, so do come back. I know today's been a bit of an update episode, but hopefully you've found it interesting. You can come and join us now over on the Patreon only after show, available to all Patreon supporters. So we shall see you over there.
We will indeed. Thanks so much, and we'll see you then. Bye.